This tutorial is going to be about bringing your Illustrator work into Photoshop and building on it there. The first thing that we need to work with is the file management. So if I come into the desktop here and make a new folder, give it a name. Within that folder, the first thing I would do is set up a few other folders. So I have one that's called Images. I usually have another one that's called Research, and another folder that I call Working. Now on the desktop here, I've got a couple of images that I'll use later. One is just an image of a rock and one of an owl. Pop them into Research, and these have been found using the technique that I've got on the other video about looking on the web but finding images of a high resolution. So if I jump back into Illustrator, I've got my file here that I set up. So I'm a poster essentially from that first assignment. Now the thing that's important here is when you bring it into Photoshop, you want it to have the layers. So organizing your layers in some sort of fashion is going to make the difference. So I've got this for the background, I've got my background leaves, I've got my middle leaves, I've got the owl head, and then I've got the top leaves. Now if I break these open, you'll see that there's no groups. Now, when you bring the layers into Photoshop, it works very much with groups, and I'll give you an example. If I make a new layer here, and I'm going to call it leaf veins, and I drag that up the top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these areas here, and you can see if I shift click, I can join them all together because they're all separate elements. So if I want this to come up on one layer, I need to group it. So Command G, or Object, Group. If I do the same with these, Shift, click them all, Command G to group. And this, even though it's one element, I need to group it, otherwise it will come out on the same layer as the red leaf, and on Photoshop you won't be able to differentiate it. So even though it's a single item, I have to go Command G and group it. Now I can see it's highlighted, so I can drag that up and drop it on the other layer. I can get these two, and if I click on them, I see they come up highlighted here, so I can shift click on those layers and I can drag them up onto leaf veins as well. And so now I'm going to find if I switch that off, all those leaves are there, and then I've got them as groups as well. So this is really important when bringing it in. And one more example, if I switch all of this off, and I look at this leaf down here, I'm just going to Command plus, enlarge it up a bit. Now these were kind of pasted inside patterns, so if I click on it, I get that. If I double click, it goes further into the pattern. So you see for this area here, it's separate from this. So if I shift click on them both, and I go Command G, that's going to bring it up as one group. These fine lines, you can see they're all separate. So the way I would select these is I would go Select, and there's an option here that says Same. So if I go Same Stroke Weight, it's going to pick up all those fine lines. It also picks up the edge of that box, so I'll just switch that off. And I'll go Command G. Double click on the background, and it goes back to normal. And when we bring these into Photoshop, you'll see what the difference is, why that was so important. So now with this, I go File, export, export as, and there will be an option here that says PSD. So I've got my Photoshop. I'll find my folder on the desktop, assign 3, and this one I'm going to put it into, I'll put it into working. Now there's an option here that says use artboards. So if I want it to crop down to the size of the page, I need to switch that on. Otherwise I'll get all these bits that are outside. So now I'll go export, CMYK. I'm going to leave it on there, and the reason why is if I have it as RGB, you'll see it only gives me the option of flat image. If I change it to CMYK, one, I have the resolution, and I've said that we're going to set it up at 150 ppi, but I also have this that says write layers, and then it will let me preserve the text, and it'll give me all those options to edit it. The anti-aliasing, so this is kind of the softness around the edge. I won't put it on none, because sometimes that comes up pixelated. I'll just have it on super sampling, so fine quality. I'll go OK, and it will go through and write that file. Now I can jump into Photoshop. Open, I go to the desktop, I'll find my folder. Inside working, I've got that Photoshop file. I'll go open. And there we go, so it will come up, and if I check this file in Photoshop, image size, you'll see that it's going to have 150 pixels per inch, and it's coming through at the same size as that document. And now there's, if I switch all the eyes on and off, there's my background, there's the background leaves, there's the middle leaves, the owl head, the top leaves, and then the veins. So I'll give you an example with the top leaves. Because I didn't group the objects, let's switch these ones off, you can see that that middle stem is part of this leaf, because it hasn't been grouped. So what this means is now if I want to change the colour of that leaf, I'll pick a green. If I go Option Shift Delete, which is fill with a foreground colour, it paints over the vein of that leaf, that centre vein, and it's because it hasn't been grouped and separated. These have, so you'll see them come up. So I'll take that back. Now the one where we grouped it, where we did the veins on the top, you will see now it's exactly the same as the group. So we've got that, got this one, and then we've also got that centerpiece because we grouped it. So all of that now sits separate. And so we did something similar with the bottom layer. So now if we have a look at the way this works, and I'll just blow up so you can see it. So these two leaves are the same, but this one wasn't grouped, and this one we did the grouping. So let's have a look and see what's going on. Alright, so with this one, we've got the red, and the stuff on the middle, you can see it's actually made a little thing here called a clipping group. And inside that, we're going to have all our groups, and you'll see that when we switch it on and off, we've got the middle stem that we grouped, and we've got the kind of fine veins that we grouped as well. So everything becomes separated out. The clipping group here, if I shift and click to switch it off, you can see the things that go outside of that clipping group. Shift click on it, and it goes back to normal. So we have that. Now let's have a look at the other one. So this one, we've got the red, and there's no differentiation between the fine lines and the thicker lines because we haven't grouped them. So being able to group the objects is going to let you control those layers a bit more specifically, so that you can colour them with a bit more ease. So I can now switch on all of those layers. Let's have a look at the middle leaves. So you can see here the middle leaves are all. Oh, there's a little bit there for the top one. Right, so it has separated these ones out a wee bit. So I'm going to bring in my Photoshop items. So if I go open, the first one I'm going to bring in is going to be the research. I'll bring in the Voodoo. I'll open that. I'm just going to get the object selection tool. I'm going to drag around the owl, and it actually does a pretty good job of selecting that. So I'll mask it. In this case, I'm not going to mess around with the mask too much. I can copy this and paste it. I can pull the tab away, and then with the arrow, I can just drag it across and drop it in. And so I'm going to put it on the owl layer, so I can actually drop it in that folder if I want. Open that up, and I don't even need to get rid of the other one. I'm just going to switch the eye off. It's got the text for the heading. I'll leave that there, and then I'm just going to click on the layer, Control T, and I'm going to scale it down a wee bit. I'm going to tuck it in here a wee bit like the original, where the eyes kind of caught behind. So if I switch that, you can see it's even been rotated a wee bit. So I might try the same thing. Command T. Move it slightly, and then hit return. This could have been an option where I changed it to a smart object when I first brought it in, so I have that ability to scale it back up, take it to what it was. But this is looking not too bad, so I'll switch off that, and then I'm going to bring in the rock as well. Go open, bring in the rock. Same thing here. I'll just, with the selection tool, I'll go select subject in this case, and it's pretty much selected the rock straight away. I'll click the quick mask. Again, I can just drag this over to the layers. In this case, I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it just behind the top leaves where it is. Command T. Scale it, rotate it a bit, I'll scale it down a wee bit more. So just moving it around until I get something that I like. There's still an option here if I wanted it to go behind this blue leaf. I could just chuck it in the middle leaves layer, and maybe grab this one, drag it up to the top, and you can see that now goes over the top, and the other ones kind of go behind the rock. So you've got that flexibility to play around with the layers. At this stage, I can start to play around with all the adjustment layers. With this, if I do change it to a smart object. So I click on the layer, come up to the kind of hamburger menu, and there's an option here called Convert to Smart Object. Now this means if I scale it down, I can scale it up, and things become non-destructive. If I want to get to the original, because you can see there's no mask here now, if I double click, what happens is that it will open that image up on its, what looks like its own layer. And then you have the mask and various things here. So you can actually add things on this layer or back on the other one. So as an example, with the adjustment layer, I'll go, okay, I'm just going to play with the levels a wee bit and make it a bit more, darken it up a wee bit. And I'll close that. The way it works with this is if I just close that layer and save it, it will then appear on here. And it's become a lot darker. So again, if it's a smart layer, you can just double click. I can delete that now, get rid of that, and you'll see when we save it and go back, the rock will be lighter. So you can work within the smart objects, or you can clip to them. So in this case, if I want to do the same thing, I can go to the levels. There's an option that comes up with this palette that says clip. So at the moment it's not clipped. So if I drag this slider down, see it affects everything in the background. Out here on the layers, you can either hold the option key down and clip or unclip it. Or in this little palette, we've got the option here where it will come up saying click to clip. And so it means when you make these changes in here, you'll see that it's only affecting the rock because that's the one that it's clipped to now. So I can darken that up a little. I can close that now. And with these adjustment layers, you can keep adding and adding to it, and they've all got masks. So for instance, if I click on the mask, we know that black blocks out. So I can make sure that I've got black as my foreground colour. I've got a soft brush, and if I run over here, it's actually taking this rock back slightly to what it was. Shift, click, so you can see it's kind of darkening it up, and it's just you can change the opacity and all that. It's just leaving the darker area here, and it's keeping this all light out to the side. I can add more and more adjustment layers, so I can go to, let's try color balance this time. Remember, I'll clip it, so the only effect it's having is on the rock. And I'm going to try and warm that rock up a wee bit. And you can kind of see the red coming into it. And if I close that, again, the same sort of thing will happen as I've got a mask. And maybe I just want the red to be out on this this highlight. Paint with black. You can see it's retaining the grey. That was a wee bit too much. I wanted to keep a bit more red out here. So again, this is something where I can go in and I can say, okay, I'm going to play around with the opacity, but I'll play around with it on the brush. So it's just doing a much subtler job of that transition of colour. And so you get these variations where there's still a bit of grey, still a bit of red. If I get this and duplicate it. So this is just duplicating the same layer. You can see that the red becomes a bit more intense. That's one. With the duplicate over the top, it intensifies it a wee bit more. And what I'll do is I'll come back to the mask, and with white and a brush, I will paint a bit of this stuff out. It's still pretty subtle. Remember, it's down on 21, so I can bump that up. And so what I'm getting now is I'm rubbing a bit of that away. If I want to see the mask, I can just go Option, click on it, Option, click on it again, will take you back. And so it's just giving a little bit of red overall, but it's still mixing over top of the other one. I can maybe enhance that by coming up to some of these blending options where we have multiply. Makes it even stronger, and then I can control that with the opacity. So again, with this process, it can go on and on and on, kind of building up the images. If we have a look at the top leaf, so I'm just going to come into this very top leaf where the owl is, and we might say, well, I want to see a wee bit more of the owl. So I would add a layer onto this mask. So everything we want to try and be as non-destructive as possible. So layer mask, reveal all. We know that black is going to block that image out. So make sure I've got black as my foreground color, and I'll do a little circle, Option delete, fills it with black, Option delete again. So I'm trying to do like little caterpillar bites in the thing. So just Option delete. I'm just filling with the foreground color. I'll go here, Option delete, so that maybe it lets a little bit more of the beat come through. Again, Option delete, Command D to get rid of that selection, and it's just happening on the mask. So if I shift and click on the mask, and it switches it off back to normal, shift click on it again, and we can see what that mask is doing. Option or Alt click, and you can see just the mask on its own. Option or Alt click again, and it jumps back to the image. So with this, maybe I want to bring a bit of blue back into the owl. So I'll find the owl layer. There's my image, and again, it's back to the adjustment layers, kind of non-destructive. And this time I'm going to go to hue and saturation, because I know there's an option in here called colorize. If I click on it, again, if I only want to see it happening to the owl, I need to clip it. I'm going to move it down to a blue color space. I'm going to take the lightness down, and I can bump up the saturation, or I can take all the color out of it, take it right down to grey. So I can get my mix. That looks good to me. And again, see the yellow of the eye? Beside this, we have a mask. So we can, so beside this, I have a mask. If I click on the mask, I can come back in here. Again, we know black blocks out. So if I get a paintbrush in this case, make it a bit smaller, and I'm going to not have it quite so soft, so I take it up to about 85. Smaller. When I paint, it's blocking out this hue and saturation, and it's showing me the image that sits below that. And the image that sits below that hue and saturation is just the normal color image. So all I'm doing here is painting in the original eyes. And you can see the colours come in then. Another option with this, maybe I can enhance them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to let's just go to levels. So again, this is clipped. So really, all I'm focusing on is the eyes. I'm going to try and brighten the eyes up quite a bit. Now, of course, it is affected right across the whole image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Command click. So you can see I've got the background and then the bit around the eye. So it's kind of selected this whole background area. If I go Option Delete, which fills with black, it's just leaving a hole for the eyes. And so you can see as I switch it on and off, it's just brightening the eyes. So let's have a look. There's our colour image. There's our hue and saturation. And I've made a mask so that it doesn't affect the eyes. And then I've made another mask right over the top that lightens and brightens everything. But I've made a mask where it's only affecting the eyes. And so with this kind of build-up, you can get some real detail and some intensity into your images. If I look at the top leaves for a second, this one here where we've got this leaf, I can Command click on it. So I've got the leaf itself. The veins are on a different layer. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get black as my foreground colour. Make sure I'm on that layer, and actually what I'll do is I've got that as a selection. I'll make a mask just above it. I'm going to get a soft brush. I'm going to bump up the size of it. And with this, because the brush is so large, I can get a nice soft edge to this leaf. And I can go to Filter now, and I can go to Noise, and I can go Add Noise. I want to have monochromatic is really important. You can see that the amount changes, so I'm going to keep it a bit subtler. Okay, I know it doesn't look terribly subtle at the moment, but with this I can now go multiply, so it bonds those together, and now with the opacity I can drop that right down. The difference here is that one, I can put a mask on it, but this is a lot more subtle than what you will get with Illustrator when we were using the trying to add texture in there. This gives you a lot more control and a lot more detail, and it also means things like the leaf veins aren't affected by that noise because they sit above it, but we can add that in. So you can really start to get some interesting things happen with this as well. That leaf sits over the top of the one below it, so I can make a new layer, chuck it below the leaf, again just with this brush. I can do that. Now I can clip it onto the leaf underneath. So if I go Option and the symbol comes up between the layers and I click it, it's only on that leaf underneath. And maybe I actually want to copy it, I'll need to drag it down to the new layer. And the reason I'm copying it is I can put a version up above here that clips onto the veins there, another one that clips on there, and this one that clips on to the red. So what we're getting is that these veins don't sort of stand out. That one probably doesn't matter so much, but you can come in here and you can again change everything down. So let's put it on 30, maybe a bit more. Okay, let's take it up to 50, and we can do the same with all of these. So we can do 50, or we can change it so that it's a different percentage on the veins and a different percentage on the leaves. So this one doesn't have any noise texture on it, it's just kind of working in there as a drop shadow.